knows the thoughts of our heart. He told Jeremiah, I knew you before you were in the womb. 1 John 3:20 says that God knows everything before they are a thing. Everything. God's omniscient power, which includes the beginning to the end and backing up from the end to the beginning, the Alpha and the Omega. How does that one attribute about God change things? When I was in school years ago, we took many classes and we had many manuals and many textbooks, and sometimes they were extra reading materials that were assigned, and J.I. Packer was one of the big reading assignments, and people who wrote books about knowing God more intimately. And I'll never forget how the book Knowing God changed my life, because that concept was so elusive to me as a young man. Knowing God. What does it mean to know God? And what I learned was knowing God meant to understand God's nature and His characteristics. And this would be one of the perfect examples that if you know this about God, it takes you a step deeper into knowing God. If you know God, it means you know how God is. You know His attributes. You know His characteristics. And this is one of the primary foundational things that leads us into knowing God, is knowing about God's omniscient power. His foreknowledge, His omniscience at work in our life. And what that literally means is that nothing ever surprises God. Think about that. In the light of all of history, that nothing surprises God. Nothing catches Him off guard. Never does God say, oh, I didn't see that coming. I love that the Bible makes clear that the Lamb was slain from the forming of the foundations of the earth. Before there was an Adam, before there was a forbidden fruit, before there was a bite of forbidden fruit, God's plan, the Lamb was slain to cover sin that had not even been committed yet. God is never caught off guard. God never just reacts. You know how a lot of our life is reactionary, right? We don't know what's going to happen, so we're constantly reacting to things that happen, to things that people say, to things that are unexpected, which is most things in life. Most of life is unpredictable, so we're always reacting. God never reacts because God is omniscient, and He knows it's going to happen before it happens. In fact, listen to me. He works His plans within His foreknowledge. Within His omniscient power, the foreknowledge of knowing what's going to happen before it happens, His plans are worked within that foreknowledge. And that's why all things work together for the good of His people who love Him and are called to His purpose, because God already knows what's going to happen, and His plans are worked accordingly. Even the most horrendous and evil plans of humanity are woven into His plan because He gives us free will. He gives us choice. We can do good, we can do evil, and humanity is very artistic about doing evil. And even with that, God looks with omniscient power into the future, and He says, how can I make lemonade with that? How can I work that for good in the building of my church, my people? And we look throughout history and we see God's fingerprints all over everything. And something that I preach here a lot for the last 27 years, divine providence. All is something that takes place within God's foreknowledge. His divine providence is fueled by His omniscience, which means when men do something evil, God takes that and He uses it as part of the plan to work things for good. There is no better case study of that than our nation, the United States of America. The things that have happened that we can look back in history and we go, oh, that wasn't good. Oh, that was bad. Boy, I wish we had a do-over on that. Yet God stepped in and He took a nation that was not a nation, people from all over the world, people who had just as many failures, just as many sins as anybody else, but because God was trying to form a nation towards His plan of missionary outreach, benevolence, evangelizing the world, establishing a foundation for a church to broaden throughout the earth. God looks into the future and He forms His plans based on the plans of man, even when those plans are not good.